Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, all. We will wait for 1 or 2 minutes and then we will start with our today's session. Yes, so good morning, everyone. We will start with our today's session on corporate governance. So before we start, we will just take a look what we had discussed in our last lecture. So in our last lecture, we had discussed about SEBI, Security and Exchange Board of India, how and when it was started by the government, what is the composition of SEBI, how many departments are there, and how these departments are working, and the functions of the departments that we had discussed. The powers of SEBI also we had discussed during our last lecture. So today we will be taking up a new topic, and that topic is related to that in India we have seen that various committees were appointed and are being appointed by the government to suggest or to recommend various measures which can be implemented in the companies to improve corporate governance practices in Indian companies. That we had discussed. Now we will be taking up a new topic which is related to the corporate governance practices in different developed countries. So in our curriculum, it is expected that we should discuss not only the corporate governance practices of Indian companies, but we should also be discussing the practices of other developed countries, the corporate governance practices of other developed countries. Uh, it is expected that we should be discussing the practices in Australian companies, the practices in the companies of United Kingdom, the practices in Singapore, and the practices in South Africa. So along with the corporate governance in India, we will be discussing the developments related to corporate governance in other countries, and particularly we will be focusing on these four countries as it is expected in our curriculum of corporate governance. We will start with the Australian companies. So when we were discussing about the implementations of the recent committee which was formed under Mr. Uday Kotak, and with a basic objective of the main objective of constituting the committee under Mr. Uday Kotak was whether there should be separation of power in Indian companies relating to the separation of two key positions of chairman of board of directors and the CEO or managing director of the organization. We had also discussed that it was expected that from 1st of April 2020, most of the recommendations of the Kotak committee will get transformed into law. But because of this pandemic, there, uh, it is not implemented yet in law. So it was recommended by the committee that yes, for the betterment of Indian companies, it is necessary that there has to be separation of power. So it was recommended, but it was not enacted in law yet. So many companies are still to agree on this particular concept of separation of power. Now, the basic difference between the developed countries and our country is that they are showing more interest in accepting the recommendations of various committees that are formed by their governments to suggest better corporate governance practices. But when we talk about Indian companies, they more rely on the government to implement a law, and once the law is implemented and once it becomes mandatory to follow that particular rule, then they start following. So we are, or our companies or Indian companies are more focused on compliance structure, that once a rule is passed by the government or by a particular law, then only we will start following it. So we are more concentrating on compliance part. Whereas when we will be discussing in our coming lectures that how the government, how corporate governance is taking place in other developed countries. So there we will come to know that they are not interested in that when the government will pass a rule, then only they will implement that particular practice. If they feel that the recommendation of a particular committee is good for the interest of the companies, they immediately start implementing, or most of the companies in the developed countries start immediately following those practices, those recommendations for good practices for corporate governance. So that is the basic difference between Indian companies and the other developed companies. So we will be discussing now the corporate governance structure in Australian companies. So when we had discussed about OECD, Organization for Economic Development Corporation, at that particular time, we had also discussed that most of the countries of the world are part of this particular forum or corporation. And the general principles of corporate governance are followed by all the countries which are part of this particular organization, OECD. So when we will be discussing about the practices of corporate governance of other countries, we will come to know that these practices are more or less similar to the practices which we are implementing in our companies in India. So very few points may differ, other points are common in nature. Basic points are, we can say basic points are common in nature. So we will be discussing about this. Now, in 2010, the government of Australia released a handbook on the guidelines related to corporate governance to be implemented in the Australian companies. And in 2001, a Corporation Act was passed by the government of Australia. And in this particular act, it was mentioned that all the companies which are working in Australia, which are functioning in Australia, and which are listed, all these companies have to follow the rules related to corporate governance, which are mentioned under Corporations Act of 2001. And later on, in 2010, a handbook related to the practices of corporate governance which are to be followed was also released by the Australian government for the benefit of the companies who are functioning in Australia or which are functioning in Australia. Now, this particular document states that whatever it is mentioned, that has to be whatever which is mentioned or laid down in Corporations Act and whatever is included in the handbook released by the Australian government has to be implemented by every company which is listed and which is functioning in Australia. But apart from that, apart from these guidelines which are mentioned in the act, if the company feels that some other practices, if implemented, can be beneficial for the company along with all these practices which are mentioned in the Corporations Act, they are having a freedom to implement those practices. As well as it is also mentioned that the recommendations of various committees which are to be set or which are set up by the Australian government and which will be formed or constituted in future can be implemented by the companies without the recommendations becoming a law and becoming compulsory for it to be implemented in the Australian companies. So that is the major thing which is included in the handbook, which was released by the Australian government in 2010. We will be just discussing some points related to some main points which are included in this handbook of corporate governance of Australia. So the first point which we will be discussing, and we will be discussing particularly those points where we will find that there is some difference between the corporate governance practices of India and the corporate governance practices of Australia. So the first point which we will be taking up for discussion is related to annual general meetings. So in Australia, it is expected that all the companies which are listed and which come under Corporations Act of 2001, they have to hold a annual general meeting from it starts before the end of 18 months. That means once a company is listed, that company has to conduct its first annual general meeting before the expiry from that date of listing to 18 months. So that is one criteria. Now, it includes the rules of the Board of Governance of Australia listed out that the annual general meeting should consider or should include the annual financial reports, the report on individual performance of directors, auditors report, election of company directors, appointment of auditors, and fixing of auditors remuneration. So all these are to be included when the annual general board meeting of Australian companies are to be held. Now, next important thing is how the financial records are to be kept and how it is to be audited. Now, when we were discussing about the preservation of the financial records of Indian companies under the law of corporate governance, under the rules of corporate governance, we had discussed that it is expected that each and every company which is listed and the uh, which comes under the corporate governance structure in India has to preserve their financial records for a period of 8 years. After 8 years, with the prior approval of the board of the company, they may dismantle the records that we had discussed in Indian companies. When we talk about Australian companies, it is expected that the financial records must be retained for 7 years. So in India, it has to be retained for 8 years. When we talk about Australian companies, they are expected to retain their financial records for any sort of inquiry or probe for a period of 7 years. After that, it is not mentioned that whether they can dismantle the record on their own or whether they have to take the prior approval, as we had discussed in about Indian companies about their board of governance. So it is not mentioned in the document related to corporate governance practices in Australia. Then when we talk about this is regarding preserving the financial records. When we talk about the audited financial statements, it is expected that the internal auditors should have a authority to report the audit report, whichever they carry out that particular audit report, they can directly send that audit report to their to the board of corporate governance, board of that particular company. In India, we had discussed that external auditors have been given this freedom, this right, but this particular right is not given to the internal auditor. Internal auditor in Indian companies, we had discussed that they have to report their audit. They have to send their audit report to their to the management of the company. They are not supposed to directly send it to the board of that particular company. So that is the basic difference when we talk about the audit preserving the financial records and how the internal audit is done in the Australian companies. Now, next we will be discussing about the general governance responsibilities of the board of directors in Australian companies. So these we will just have a quick look what these general responsibilities are. More or less, most of the responsibilities are very much similar to the Indian companies. So first, general responsibility of company director and other board members or other board officers are appointment of company directors and including chairperson. So this we are also practicing. Appointment of company secretary, yes, it is also there. Appointment of alternate company directors. Now here it is expected that appointment of alternate director is the responsibility of board of directors, and it is expected that the alternate directors are to be chosen on the basis of their skills and knowledge. Now, how alternate directors are to be chosen is also mentioned, and why alternate director is to be chosen is also mentioned in the handbook. Now, why alternate director? Because the present alternate director means when the director who is the whom we can call the original director, when the original director is remaining absent because of ill health or because of any other valid reason, then on his place or her place, a alternate director can be appointed for a specific period. It can be, say, for 15 days, 1 month, or 2 months, whatever, which is approved by the board of directors. Now, this particular alternate director will remain in office only till the original director resumes his office of director in that particular company's board. So that is, they have mentioned the role and appointment of alternate director. They have also mentioned use of common seal. So use of common seal here means the common seal of the company. There cannot be different seals or different stamps of different directors. So entire company, entire board, and all the directors of the board should have a common seal, which should be used whenever the company is entering into a contract with any other company, or whenever the company's documents or minutes of the meeting of the company are to be authenticated. Then common seal is to be used. No private seals of the board directors are to be used. Next, other points which are mentioned in the Australian Companies Handbook is related to conduct of board meeting, general and special meetings, which are very much similar to what we had discussed in Indian companies. So we will not be discussing more about that. Recording of minutes and resolution, and members access to the minutes. That also we had discussed, that how recording is to be done. Earlier, it is also mentioned in the handbook of Australian companies that they have to be preserved in physical form, but now they have also made a provision that either it can be in physical form or it can be in the electronic form. But only thing required is that these minutes of meeting, once they are prepared for a particular meeting, these minutes of meeting should have a easy access of all the directors of the other board of the board of the company also. That means it is to be shared, the minutes of meeting, once it is finalized, once it is authenticated by the chairperson of the company's board, then it is to be shared with the other directors also. Next is next point which is mentioned in the handbook, important point, is maintaining a registered office within Australia that is open and accessible to the public. This is one of the important point which they have mentioned. Maintaining a registered office
here we are talking about a registered office of the company, that whichever company which is functioning in Australia and which is listed and which falls under Corporations Act of 2001, they have to maintain a registered office, and that office should be accessible by the public. So that is another main point which they have included here. Maintaining next point which they have listed in the handbook is related to maintaining a register for members. So whenever a board meeting is called, a register is to be maintained where they can sign against their name. So it will preserve a record that when the meeting was conducted, where the meeting was conducted, at what time meeting was conducted, and who all were the directors who were present for that particular meeting. For maintaining that particular record, it is expected that each and every company's board should maintain a register for that particular purpose. So that we had discussed in our Indian companies also. Next is related to the appointment of company auditor. Here they call company auditor in India. In Indian companies perspective, we call it independent auditors. So here it is expected that the company's board will be appointing a person who will be called as company auditor, and who will be monitoring, who will be supervising, or who will be controlling the internal auditors, or who will be just checking whether internal auditors are functioning their role and responsibilities in accordance with the Corporations Act or not. When we talk about Indian companies, we have discussed that of course internal auditors are to be appointed by each and every company, which will regularly see to it that whatever rules, accounting rules and accounting procedures which are to be followed in say maintaining the financial records of a particular company, they are to be followed. That is the duty, that is the responsibility of internal auditors. And in Indian companies, we have discussed that it is not company auditor, but it is the designation of that particular auditor is called as independent auditor. Now independent auditor means that he is not in the control of the company, as well as he is not in the control of board also. He is called as independent, and that authority has been given to him. He can conduct an inquiry into the say mishappenings of or misdoings of the by internal auditor, and he is having authority that he can monitor, he can control, he can supervise whether the internal auditors of the company are functioning properly as per the rule or not. Next, which is related, which is mentioned in the handbook for Australian companies, is related to the provision of copy of financial statements and report to members unless the member has waived that right. So this particular point we had discussed about for Indian companies also, that how that it is, there is a provision that the financial statements are to be shared not only by the public at large or the shareholders at large, but they are to be shared with the directors or committee members also, or board members also. Last point, important point under the role of directors of or board members for Australian companies is related to sending notices of change to office holders, the constitution of rules, etc., to the government. So whenever the changes of office holds are there, that means whenever a director is retiring prematurely, and and uh, some another director is appointed on that particular place at that particular time, the government authorities should be aware of that why he has prematurely retired, and the new director, why the new director is appointed in his or her place, and what will be the address, registered address of that particular office bearer or director of the company. So that are the important role and responsibilities of the committee members, or what we can say is related to this board of director or the board members. Now, one important point which is covered in the handbook is related to the disqualification. It is related to disqualification of the directors from the board. How a person who is the director of a board of the company can be disqualified. So certain points they have listed out. If a person is has done anything related to that particular point, then the person is disqualified from the position of board of director of a particular board of a company. Now, the first point which they have mentioned is that any person who is once disqualified because of the mentioned uh, provisions or mentioned other mentioned points in the uh, handbook of the for Australian companies, once disqualified, he will remain disqualified for a period of 5 years. They have listed out the reasons of disqualification is also once first reason is once it is proved that the person has involved, that the director is involved anything which is involved in anything which is in contravention to the rules mentioned under the Corporations Act 2001, then the director is disqualified from his position of director in the board of directors of that particular company. So in contravention means he is working against the rules of the government. Once it is proved, the director is removed from the position. Next important point is that once the person is indicted or convicted, once the person is convicted for a criminal offense, once a person is convicted for a criminal offense, then the person is disqualified. Third point is related to that once a person is involved in financial mis financial say dealings, or which he is or she is not expected, as he or she is part of the board of director, and once that he is involved in that type of financial mishappenings or financial irregularities, then the person is disqualified from the position of directorship. Next is when the director has done anything against law of a particular country in which the Australian company is functioning. Once it is proved, the director is disqualified. Suppose a director is there in the board of a particular Australian company, and that Australian company is not only functioning in Australia, but it does have the offices or say in branches in other countries also. Say they have a branch in India also. And if a director does anything which is against the Indian law or Companies Act 2013, as it is applicable for corporate governance in India, then that particular person can be disqualified from the position of directorship in the board. And last thing is, when the person is declared insolvent or bankrupt by the Australian court, the person is disqualified from the board of directors. So under these five uh, categories, if a person is found, then the person is disqualified from the position of director in the under the Australian government rules or Corporations Act of 2001. And it is also mentioned that once a person is disqualified, the person shall remain disqualified for a period of 5 years. After 5 years, with the prior approval of the board of director of that particular company, the person can be included again in the board. So that is related to the disqualification of board member or the board of directors. Now, next important point which we will be discussing is related to performance evaluation. So in detail, we had discussed about performance evaluation, uh, of how evaluation is done for directors, how evaluation is done for the entire board, and how evaluation in India is done for the independent directors also. So same thing is implemented here in Australian companies also. It is expected that the office of the director should be should be related with the performance of the director. It should not happen that once a director is appointed, he will remain in office for a period of say 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year, or 5 year, whatever the tenure which is fixed by the board of directors. So it should not happen. Yearly, his or her evaluation of performance should be done, and on the basis of performance evaluation only, it should a decision should be taken by the entire board to continue the services of that particular director, or to discontinue the services of that particular director. So that is related to performance evaluation. Now, next one is related to the last point which we will be discussing, is related to, they have given the checklists also, that these are in the handbook. They have given the checklist for better corporate governance practices. So they have given a checklist. It is expected that this particular checklist, which consists of number of questions, and the questions against each statement or against each question, they have to mention, the board has to mention either they have to mention yes or they have to mention no. I'll just read out one or two important practices. First practice which they have included under strategy and planning is, do the board and management understand the importance of achieving both business profits and social outcome for clients? Now, for this particular statement, either the board has to write yes, or it has to write no. Second statement is, does the organization have strategic plan and